so much, Chair Nabal McKinney, for kicking off the Board Finance Committee meeting. You will hear mainly this evening from myself and Chief, what's your name? Jorge Robles. It's that kind of, y'all forgive me.
That was a mama moment.
Yes, it was. Which kid are you? But we're going to go ahead and jump right in to make sure that we leave ample time for any questions or feedback as we move forward. So we always like to start out our budget conversation and presentation, just really grounding us on the, again, historic investments, the advocacy of this board in partnership with other city leadership to really realize some pretty strong outcomes on behalf of our students, families, and our educators. Here on the first slide, again, I just want to highlight that we are currently still celebrating and learning from having the highest CCAP and ELC scores in our district history. We know that our student proficiency and growth continues on a steady climb across the district. And so I'm going to dig into a little bit of what that means, but this is very familiar to everyone that we're in a really historic space. And so as we're grounding our conversations around the budget, just keeping in mind that continuity of services and outcomes that we're realizing on behalf of our students, and also the gaps we want to continue to close so that we realize all of our students in every success marker for the district. Again, just going a little bit deeper, we are a 4-time level 5 and advancing school district. As a reminder, level 5 is the highest growth measure you can receive in the state of Tennessee. So we're really proud of our young people, our students and scholars, and our educators for the continued growth. We're also at the second highest level designation that a school district can receive, with being acknowledged as an advancing district. We are home again to a number of reward schools. We continue to outpace the state growth in almost every tested category across every grade. We have realized double-digit increases in proficiency since 2021. And when you are moving just outside of sheer percentages, we often lead the state or at the top of the state in the numbers of students who continue to meet and exceed their goals every year. And of course, we are celebrating the highest and second highest graduation rates in the history of our great school district. So again, digging down a little bit deeper, again, the highest achievement in the district in all tested subjects since the adoption of our more rigorous state standards and proficiency level targets. Again, we have rebounded beyond the impact of the pandemic several years ago. I've mentioned we continue to outpace the state growth in almost every tested category. We've seen significant gains across all of our elementary tested categories. In fact, 19 of 21 grade level subject categories improved just over last year. And again, double-digit gains. But most importantly, nearly all student groups improved proficiency levels in all 4 tested subjects in our 3 through 8 grade band in both 2024 and 2025. And lastly, from 2024 to 2025, all student groups made proficiency gains in tested areas like integrated maths 1, 2, and 3, and U.S. history, and almost all grades made gains in English 1, English 2, and biology at the high school level. Just to recap and ground us again, as you dig into that individual growth measure, I've talked a lot about proficiency. We have realized, again, a level 5 composite for our grades 4 through 8 band, and in every category. If you can give me one more click. At the top of the pyramid, you can see that composite score. On the next slide, you can see our system-wide composite for the entire district. Again, every category with level 3 and numeracy, and system-wide literacy and numeracy, but a composite of a level 5. Remember, level 3 is what should be expected year over year. And then lastly, as we dig into TVA's 2025 TCAP ACT composites, and as was just mentioned in the director's eval conversation, we really focus on the post-secondary metrics for our young people. So we're really excited As you look at the culmination of a student's experience and taking the ACT, we continue to see students outpacing their growth projections for each of the subject areas, including the overall composite. Most importantly, I say all that to say thank you. Thank you again to this board for your continued support, really setting the conditions for us to keep the main thing, and to keep investing in having high quality educators and leaders all across the district. And of course, meeting the tone and tenor of our mantra of ensuring that every student is known. We appreciate the partnerships that you have forged across the city, not only with our mayor and the council, but also with our educators and our families that we serve. And all of this has helped us really know where we were, right, in the past, where we were, but continuing to help us not stay there. We continue with our continuous improvement work. While we're celebrating all these great successes, we still have quite a bit of work to do and to accomplish on behalf of our city. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Robles, who is going to walk us through our budget. He is going to take some time to really ground us in more context around where we've been, where we are with regards to our budget, but also as we think about continuity of operations and the innovations that are represented in our aspirational budget. He will walk us through that, including our timeline and next steps, and ample time for discussion. Chief Robles.
Thank you, Dr. Battle. Yep, it's on. Board Chair, Committee Chair, Board members, great to be here with you. It's that time of the year, so here we are. There's a lot of information to cover, so I'm going to try to move quickly, but really try to emphasize some of the things that are really important for today's discussion, and then obviously try to leave as much time as possible for questions at the end. So the presentation, we're going to start with a level setting, as Dr. Battle said, around our current budget. These are the 4 priorities that you adopted for this year that anchor the development. I'm not going to go through them, but you're familiar with it and help guide the budget that we developed. So in last June, you adopted a budget that actually provided us with the essential funding to support the priorities, the essential continuity funding so that we can sustain the investments that we have. We were able to fund the high impact programs that have made such a huge difference in our students' outcomes. And we funded other initiatives such as safety priorities and health through the health department and nurses at every school. Then subsequently in December, you adopted an amendment to our FY26 budget, which actually reflected the changes primarily from the student-based budgeting full adjustment that schools go through, and some other changes to FTEs necessary to reflect what was happening, such as, if you recall, we talked about shifting some positions from IDEA funding to local funding to continue to provide support for kids as that grant has been decreasing. This is a reminder of some of the key investments that are in our FY26 budget currently, and which includes the COLA that you approved for our employees, the big investment on high quality textbooks, and a lot of the key strategies that were previously funded by ESSER Bridge. So now let's talk about our proposed fiscal year 27 budget. And as Dr. Battle referenced, we'll talk about continuity of operations, which, in the form of an increase over the FY26 budget. So you have the adopted amended budget, copy of that. So this builds on that budget. And then we'll talk about the aspirational investments that we have identified to support the priorities that this board has set out for FY27. As always, we are anchored on our focus outcomes and core tenets. And the priorities that this board adopted have essentially guided and anchored the way that we have put this budget together. And as a reminder, you prioritize continuity of operations so that we are able to maintain those foundational investments that enable the continued progress, as Dr. Battle was referencing earlier. Academic coherence, and we've talked about that as ensuring the aligned teaching and learning and pathways that deliver consistent improvement and high-quality instruction for every student. Talent strategy, which is really focusing on ensuring that MNPS retains, attracts, and develops exceptional educators by positioning ourselves as an employer of choice. And positive school supports, which is ensuring that students learn and thrive in safe, welcoming schools that promote well-being, belonging, and readiness to learn. Some important budget context specifically around state funding that we want to make sure that we mention for you. We have a growing dependency on local funding as the base growth. I think this is not a surprise to any one of you. Right now, we are sitting close to 74% of our funding actually comes from local funding, 18% from the state. And as the base grows and the way that the state funding works through the TISA formula, that the proportion of the local funding continues to increase. Also, the state continues to authorize increased charter approvals, which essentially moves funding away from what MNPS receives and go into the state authorized charter schools. And the ESA voucher expansion continues to impact our funding. We have talked about in the past, ESA is about close to 11 million on an annual reduction. So at the end, a true up from the funds that we receive from the state. And an interesting note is that as you look at the proposed bills that are going through the legislation right now, the EFS voucher expansion, the fiscal bill is about $150 million in what it would cost to actually change the definition of economically disadvantaged that we know would benefit. The way that we would be able to support our students is half that. So I mean, $83 million. So that is the context that we're in right now, and it's important to reference because that might impact essentially what is the funding that we're looking to have access to in the future. We have talked about this in the past, but to continue to level set the what you should expect on timelines. Right now, we're reviewing the proposed continued operations increase and the aspirational budget investments. Tomorrow, we'll be sharing the same information with the community. On the 14th, this will come back for your consideration. And once the mayor submits his budget ordinance to City Council and we know what the allocation for MNPS is, we'll come back to you sometime in May with the line detail budget that would essentially outline and will match the funds allocated to MNPS in the mayor's ordinance to ultimately have this all approved and wrapped up by the end of June. And you have seen this in the past, a reminder of the roles key stakeholders play throughout this process, and this board obviously has a huge and important responsibility of reviewing, considering, and adopting the MNPS operating budget. This year, we're having these conversations. All right. So let's get into FY27 and let's talk about continuity of operations, which is the first priority. Here's what we are proposing for you to consider. In terms of the operating budget, we're looking at a $12 million increase to sustain or to provide continuity. And I will provide a little bit more detail on this on the next slide. We've also included a increase to the student-based budgeting weight to ensure that schools essentially continue to have the purchasing power, given that salaries increase, with the COLA and step increases as well as inflation. So maintain that purchasing power for our schools. The salary step increase that we include every year and this board prioritizes in our operating budget. We're estimated at $10.5 million for FY27. And this excludes the roles that are funded through grants. So that is work through the grants itself. And also on the health and pension benefits, these are estimates. These are not amounts that have been approved yet by the governing bodies for both. But in the case of the health insurance for our certificated employees, the estimate is that it would be somewhere around $8.5 million, a 7% increase if we think about keeping up with the rise in the cost of healthcare, based on what the experts are projecting for our portfolio. And in the case of support staff, which is established and approved by Metro government, the estimate is $9.25 million. That is about a 16.8% increase. Now, only half of that would impact our fiscal year 27 because that takes effect in January. So it's January to January. Our certificated is July to July. So what we're including in our budget right now is only half of that for 27. But I wanted to give you the estimate for the full increase as it has been proposed. So a little bit more detail on continuity of operations. So the $12 million that I referenced, the main drivers are the usual suspects. Contractual increases, a little bit over $4 million. We have other cost increases, primarily inflationary or where rates go up. Utilities being a big one that is going to go up, and we think that might actually be something that we have to revisit in the near future. And then as we work through the budget, we also identify some savings that we factored in that $12 million increase for next year. There is no increase on the number of FTEs for Support Hub for FY27. We don't know the changes at the school level as they're going through their budgeting process right now. So that information will come later to this board. So speaking of schools, on the FY27 student-based budget allocation, we increased the weight from $6,440 to $6,655 per pupil, as a reference to make sure that schools are set up for success. This is based on the enrollment projections that were done in mid-February. So this means that, as you know, we have a full adjustment process so that if enrollment changes in whichever direction, then we revisit the allocation to make sure that schools are kept whole in the process as we learn, how many students are we serving at each place. So the total allocation that is spiral to schools, it goes up by about $500,000, and that total allocation also includes an increase to the exceptional education allocation, which is part of the whole allocation, to account for an expected increase in the number of exceptional ed students, as well as rising costs for the services that we provide. Sure, they're doing right on time. All right, so let's move to the aspirational budgets and the key investments that we're considering here. I'm going to share this with you in alignment with the board priorities, as we thought through them in support of those board priorities. And obviously, all of these investments will be depending on funding availability. The approach that we took for the aspirational budget is using logic, model, and continuous improvement frameworks to actually anchor our decisions and our mission of every student known, and making sure that what we're doing is focus on impact to students and deploying resources to make sure that students are set up for success and continue to increase their outcomes. So it's an outcome-driven planning, what we have gone through and the way that we thought about these investments. And it also helped us essentially understand what's most important to achieve our outcomes for each one of the priorities. This is a list, summary list of each of the key investments aligned by board priority. And I'm going to go in now and give you a high-level summary of each of this, and definitely will be happy to answer questions at the end for those that you would like to want to have more information. All right, so let's start with our priority around academic coherence. One of the investments is academic acceleration, is 10.5 million, and this is really strategies for tier one interventions, as well as priority school, impact schools, and schools that are on the cusp, and so that we can match targeted supports for our students. And these are, evidence-based acceleration supports. The other strategy, which is $180,000, is to continue our program of providing no-cost supplies to our students, expanding to first grade. So great success, and we want to try to continue that. The third strategy is around early learning enhancements. It's almost 1.3 million, and this is really to expand the high-demand pre-K seats that through the Hillwood Early Learning Center. And given that we have demand there. The fourth key investment in academic coherence is investing on visual and performing art supports. It's about $700,000 to continue to invest in our summer camps. Every student knows summer camps that have a great success. Educator support, transportation, resources that our kids need to continue to grow and thrive on visual and performing arts. In college and career readiness in advanced academics, $750,000 to strengthen our gifted and talented program. And last but not least, unique learning enhancements, $210,000. This is to help us improve differentiated learning strategies across the district. I'm going to move to talent strategy priority, key investments. So the priority of talent strategy. The first key investment would be around retention, recruitment, and workforce readiness. I referenced in the continuity of operations that a COLA, 1% COLA is a $6.8 million investment. And that breaks at about $4.5 million for certificated employees and $2.3 million support staff. So what we're looking here is to invest in COLA, but also continuing the commitment and the exercise that we've done in previous years to review the pay scales to remain competitive. We will look at a high-level approach to make differentiated investments at certain steps for teacher pay scale that would help us remain competitive for entry level or steps where we have a high volume of teachers, and continue that work around making sure that we remain relevant with our teacher pay scales. In this, we also want to invest $350,000 on expanding recruitment strategies, invest in increasing the stipend amounts. So this is things like exception pay or the professional development stipends. That's estimated at 1.2 million. And also investing on differentiated pay at about $1.6 million. Two other key strategies under the talent strategy priority. One is the classroom associate expansion at $5.8 million. This is to help us enhance classroom associate expansion by doing strategic deployment and training for this critical role that is having so much success. And to actually really excited about the investing 1.3 million on Grow Your Own program. So this is establishing an MNPS education preparation program. This actually we can leverage the pathway to train and prepare classroom associates would be one of the opportunities that we could capitalize on and strengthen permit teacher certification programs. So let's move to the fourth priority of positive school supports. One, we have facilities preventative maintenance for $7 million. Essential, self-explanatory. The second one is around cybersecurity, $115 million. This is a growing need in today's environment. I want to make sure that we're investing in this. Third, $200,000 to invest on philanthropic enhancements. This is to really help us build a dedicated philanthropic service so we can strengthen our ability to connect donors with high impact priorities and create continuity and sustainability of funding through that channel. For the financial optimization, this is near and dear to my heart, $300,000 to strengthen our capabilities around forecasting resource allocation across department and schools, so become really more sophisticated and relevant in how we are able to do this work, given the size of our budget, but also strengthening integration of the financial planning analysis across funding sources, so we're able to help our schools and departments best leverage resources across the board. So continue to improve in that space. The fifth key strategy is around school health clinics. That is $9.2 million. So this is an initiative that has been in our aspirational budget for some time. The idea of having school-based health services delivered through partnerships available to serve our kids and families. And this amount considers one site per quadrant. If we wanted to scale that out, it's about $2.3 million per site. So we wanted to, go beyond the four that would afford us the 9.2 million. That is about an estimated 2.3 million, which includes both the building and the operating component of the investment. The sixth key strategy is around before and after care, $2 million. This would actually help us increase the access to high quality before school and after school, and also the out-of-time programming that help us support academic enrichment, improve student engagement, and whole child development. We have approximately $850,000 identified for family engagement enhancements. So this is really to help us strengthen our capacity at our schools to partner with families and have them as active contributors to the student learning and well-being, but also to help us retain and recruit families through this work so that we can actually sustain and grow enrollment by showing them the fabulous schools that we have in MNPS. The eighth strategy, key strategy is community achieves expansion. This is really expanding our in-house operations. Our focus is on coordinating the student support strategies and partnering with the schools, helping them address potential barriers to learning. It's a successful program that we would look to expand. And the last key strategies that we want to share with you, 9 is environmental stewardship. This is a little bit over $500,000 that would help us put in place programs to support environmental work at the schools. Number 10 is Student Success Centers. So that is almost $11 million to have locations where we can provide that short-term intervention and support for students that are experiencing that, the academic, behavioral, or social-emotional challenges. So we can offer that structure, setting, and support for students. And last but not least, $3 million for security enhancements. This would be an expansion of the audio enhancement staff devices to all staff, with the safety feature included in those devices, as well as enhance our safety infrastructure in elementary school and district-wise. Also, importantly, is to put in place centralized security support. So as we expand the systems, it is important to have the capacity to manage and monitor them to be successful. All right, so a lot of information and left some time for questions. So I'll turn it over back to Board Member McKinney. Member McKinney.
Thank you so much. We will now open it up for questions. And the easiest way to do this is just start by district. So I'm going to start with District 1. Board Member Taylor.
Can't even get my mic on. All right. It's like I'm online. All right. I have a couple of questions. Probably we'll have some more after we go through everybody else. But the first question I have is around advocacy and peace centers. Those were in the director's evaluation report, and I just wanted to be clear about where we can find that within the budget. I know I saw the student support centers are receiving about $11 million, which may include some of that, but I wasn't sure exactly where we would find.
As you're pulling it up, Chief Robles, and you might be thinking about this differently. So so the current advocacy centers are elementary schools. Peace centers are in our secondary schools, middle school, and high school are in our current operating budget. So you don't see an aspirational ask for that because it's already there. It would be any increases, compensation, things of that nature will be represented in our continuity of operations so that we can continue to operate those at the same level that we currently are.
Got it. Thank you.
And I think if you go back to, if I'm not mistaken, I am mistaken, so I'll stop there. But they're already in our operating budget.
And I guess I'm wondering if maybe in the budget book, if there may be some place to put in the notes that these are areas where those particular staff or resources can be located throughout the budget book.
So
Yeah, we can point that out, but Dr. Battle is right. So the current services that we provide at those centers are included in our continuity of budget. So when I was referencing continuity of budget, it's an increase over what we currently have, and what you see in the schools today, that's already included in sort of the continuity of operations.
And as far as the budget representation, those are in school budgets. So you'll see them in the individual school budget. So every school will have either an advocacy coach or a restorative coach in their individual budgets. So those are school-based employees.
Great. Thank you for clearing that up for me. The next question that I have is I saw additional funds for before and after care support. Will that be put in place to help support the new school start times?
Yep. I think we would all agree, even before the start time adjustment, there was a need to expand before and after care, but definitely in alignment with that transition, particularly at the elementary school where we'll have that 15-minute shift. As much as possible, we would like to offset the need to adjust family schedules by specifically offering before care. But it has been a long-standing need, and we would love to be able to invest and accelerate it at this point so that families would have access at the beginning of the school year.
All right. And my last question for this first go-round is our support staff have discussed with us that during the breaks are very difficult for them. And I wanted to know if we have any way to address that, or if we have taken a look at doing something around supporting them during the spring and fall and winter breaks.
We have also been in conversation with our support staff around that. We've talked about some of the trade-offs with regards to employee schedules and things of that nature. And so what you see represented, which we are still working on some of the detail around, under our talent strategy, and you see, and this conversation makes me think we might want to rename this, but you see right before differentiated pay. Thank you for, okay, where we have the increased stipend amounts. So one of the things we're trying to do is to look at our calendar. One, fundamentally, and we've had this conversation with MNEA as well, when it comes to exception pay, PD pay, we've been at the same level for a long time. So while compensation has increased, we've not increased some of the exception pay buckets to keep pace with compensation. So that's one thing. The other component of that is to also address some of the feedback we've received for support staff. By law, I know one of the things that was surfaced was around how you can trade out days and like if you can rename them. By law, we're unable to do that. We have dug into that as a part of the feedback, but that's what you see represented there. And I've already asked my team just to go back and like check numbers to make sure that that investment amount is going to be truly reflective of the growth that we could see in other spaces if we're able to invest in other areas. So that's where you will see that reflected. Am I, okay. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you all.
Yep.
Thank you. District 2.
Thank you. My first question is, what does an enhancement of Classroom Associates expansion look like?
Yes, specifically, so we are fortunate that we currently have on staff 532, is that right?
531.
531. 531.
Go higher one.
Classroom associates. And so the reason we're trying to be really strategic around this is that if we're able to expand, we want to make sure that the workforce demand is able to keep up. And so the prioritized areas right now, the top prioritized areas are our priority schools, our schools with the highest need. And those of you who have been part of the conversations this week have heard us talk pretty intensely around that. But also our high schools, which are our larger schools in the district, just reducing their ratio right off the bat. So that would be the first phase of that expansion around classroom associates. Again, we're trying to balance in a year's time workforce demands with the needs of our schools as well.
So the enhancement is an expansion.
It is, and, see, y'all were going to get me. I told y'all, I was going to try not to forget. And we are working on some pipeline development where our classroom associates can essentially be trained on the job towards permits and certification. And so that would allow us to both enhance their skills and also their readiness to move into other positions within the district.
My assumption is then that would work into the Grow Your Own program,
Yes,
ideally.
yes.
It would work as
There
a
could be.
pipeline.
Absolutely.
Okay. Which, by the way, I'm glad to know that we're working on a Grow Your Own program. I know that's something we've talked about for many years,
Yeah.
and it's just hard to get off the ground, quite frankly, it seems. My next question is on the philanthropic enhancements. How is this dedicated philanthropic services arm different from MPEF and Pencil?
Would you like to take the first go at it? I'm happy to, Jorge. All right, so we have some anchor partners in the city. Pencil primarily focuses on strategies that support directly our classroom teachers by way of the DG Pencil Box, tutoring services, and supports around our academies of Nashville. Those are some of the big buckets, Pencil, but not a necessarily fundraising arm, although they do serve as kind of a pass-through around grants and other opportunities on the district's behalf, given the strong partnership. Who was the other one you mentioned?
MPEF.
NPF, okay. So the National Public Education Foundation here in the city doesn't actually, so if you look across the country, typically public school foundations serve as the philanthropic kind of fundraising arm of the organization. That is not the structure that exists currently here in Nashville. It is a conversation that we've had for quite some time. Typically, what you see in those foundations is that those foundations align closely with the district to help kind of amplify what's happening in the district, but also fundraising towards key priorities that may or may not be funded through the flows of investments we receive, i.e. federal, state, and local. That is typically the role of foundations across the country, and we've studied them, and we've had these conversations with MPF and others. And so because we have an absence of that, there is a grand opportunity for us as a district to also be actively seeking out grants and fundraising opportunities. I think a perfect example is that we have some very supportive and eager alum of Nashville Public Schools from districts across the city who are coming together to form an alumni association across the district. That is one strategy that would be housed, right, not supported, I guess I should say, under this philanthropic arm. And that organization, that group, wants to fundraise around key priorities of the school district. So context is typically Pencil serves, right, when it comes to direct supports to our classrooms and fundraising there. Typically, the foundation, i.e. MPF, would be a fundraising philanthropic arm. That's not currently how they function, and so therefore, we're looking to invest in this way. By the way, if and when you do this right, we've partnered with Harvard University and some other folks to help us study this. These departments, arms, leaders, if you will, could almost raise enough investments to cover their role within the district, as well as support key priorities. And so we want to make sure that we're also doing our part as a district and as an administration around the investments that are needed. Clearly, we're seeing the level of investment shift from state to local, but we also want to do our part to have someone or a team that's waking up every day going after grants and other philanthropic opportunities to support our priorities.
If I just add really quickly, we did a lot of research and study around this, including leveraging the Harvard students and talking to districts that have do this successfully. This capacity helps, in addition to what Dr. Battle referenced, is regardless of whether you're leveraging an existing foundation as a philanthropic arm or as the fundraising arm or the fiscal arm, you require capacity to actually best coordinate with them, but also you want capacity to, when donors come, not through a foundation, but directly, you want to be able to have the work ready to match strategies with donors. And that requires an ongoing work and capacity and alignment, so it becomes really another source of sustainable funding over the years.
Thank you, Chief Robles. Well said.
And this is just a comment, but when we are doing the work around raising the additional funds for the expansion of the element, like where does the money go and who is the person on the team who helps to get that done? When we were doing this with elementary schools, and that was a difficulty. This would solve some of that problem.
Another great example. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't disagree that there is a number of different ways that this would be helpful to us, as it is understood that MPEF does not work in the typical or expected way, and has not for many years, to work in tandem within our own goals and our growth wants and needs for funding. It's my understanding, looking at different options that are out there for funding, particularly as we are becoming more and more dependent on local funding, that we're leaving a lot of money on the table for grants and other things, because it's simply not the priority of those other two groups. Though Pencil does incredible and important direct work, I know that that's just not a place that they can expand at this time, but they have as needed in certain ways, like in Aaron's example. So I am glad to hear that we're doing that, as I think that there is a great potential, and it's quite very likely that we would raise well over the cost. Because again, I know that there are lots of places that we're just not able to currently fundraise or access grant work, because that priority just doesn't exist?
I mean, I think it's a fair kind of question to lead with so that it's clear that we're not trying to duplicate
Yes.
services. And so we don't see this as a duplication of services at this point, but it is a great need for us as an organization.
It's a need that I think we've had for some time. We've been trying to figure out how to not duplicate it, but also create it and make sure that it's a clear pathway for individual needs when they come up, whether it's somebody that wants to go to Pencil or someone that needs to go to MPEF, or if it's somebody that comes to us directly, so they know which highway to take to get to the destination that they desire. And so I think it's wise for us to build that highway. So I'm happy to hear that. And then my last question that I currently have, though admittedly, just like my colleague, Mr. Taylor here, I will also need to maybe go back and look for a few minutes. The Student Success Centers, can you explain how those are different from our current advocacy or peace centers or even our ALCs? How are those different?
So our advocacy centers and peace centers are a part of our restorative plan here in the district, proactive strategies embedded within our schools to eliminate or decrease any exclusionary discipline response for our students. So that direct response, so there's no delay there. The second thing you mentioned is our alternative learning centers. And part of the Success Center approach is to redesign, right, and transform from what is traditionally known as an alternative learning center and move it into a restorative, comprehensive support space, not only for students, but also families, so that we are actually supporting and addressing whatever behavior action that might have transitioned a student to an ALC. And I'll say this because I was just in one of our ALCs last week. We have incredible students who deserve so much opportunity and access based upon sometimes just one, decision or action. And so I'm really excited about this one. This strategy has been in our aspirational budget since we started the aspirational budgeting process. It would allow us to create more of a restorative space closer to the students' community, school of choice, and just have genuine access to the resources and supports necessary to support them on their journey moving forward.
I can't tell if this is on. There's no light. Can you all hear me? Okay, we'll go with it. We'll just pretend like that's not always on and go along with that. Okay, and moving on. So yeah, the Student Success Centers, I know that we have seen them before in our aspirational budget. So I appreciate that clarification. I want to ask for one more clarification. Is it only for students that are inside of an ALC currently, or is it for students that also need additional supports inside their other school that they are currently a part
So
of?
what it will do is create somewhat of an in-between.
Okay.
Right, so that when you're not necessarily in a 180-day placement or zero tolerance, it's a short window of support, kind of restoring and getting students back on track so that they can transition well prepared, but sooner to their school of choice.
All right, thank you.
So before we move on to the next person, we have about 7 minutes before our board meeting starts. So I'm going to ask everyone to kind of shorten. We'll go back around. We may have to extend it beyond our board meeting, just so the public knows. But I want to make sure that we get our questions out. District 3.
Thank you. In the interest of time, excellent detail on this. This was very helpful. Thank you. Quick things to point out for us to munch on, nibble on, whatever, digest. School health clinics, that makes me think of, I think that would be a great way for us to be a team player with the rest of Metro government and explore what that looks like with Nashville General. And I echo Board Member Taylor's raising the concern about the pay dates or the timing of pay cycles in the fall. And that's all for now. Thanks.
Wow, thanks. Okay, so we're going to move over to District 6. Okay, 6. 6.
Thank you. So, I have one question that keeps coming up when I'm meeting with parents and community members is related to school-based budgeting. Now, just before I ask my question, what I want to say is that information is available on the website, page 205 of the budget book, if you want to look it up right now. But can you briefly explain what the deadline is for school-based budgets being submitted for review and approval to the district?
So the budgets actually were completed by the school or finalized for review this past Friday. So now we're in the review process, which goes through several conversations with the ED, the supervisor, as well as key departments around the construction of the budget. And then we are done in early April with the final approved budget for each of the schools.
Fantastic, thank you. So the buzzword these days on the street is transparency. And again, I'll repeat, the school-based budgets for this current school year are available in the budget book. Page 205 is where it begins. If you want to look it up, it's available out there, and every single school budget is available on the website and always has been. So thank you, Chief Robles. Thank you, Dr. Battle.
District 8?
I think I don't have a question as much of a comment, and this is similar to what Board Member Young had said, but, you know, certainly I'm looking through this and I see some places where I'm like, gosh, why don't we get money from X place for that? The top of mind example is this academic acceleration that talks about strategies for tier one, but also interventions at priority schools, impact schools, cusp schools. We literally just were in front of the State Board of Education yesterday talking about this, and there was a question that came up about how much funding we get from the state, and, you know, we see that in here is 18% at this point, and that is like exactly the type of thing we should be getting funding either from the federal government or the state government for. At the moment, that kind of thing is not as possible because the types of things we had previously around federal grants, state grants, et cetera, don't exist. But it does speak to why I think it's interesting to have someone on our team who's in sort of in the position of grant writing and that type of thing, because one can imagine there are lots of other organizations, not just the ones, I mean, we think a lot about the foundations here in Nashville. And what does MPEF or someone else do, Pencil, et cetera, to raise money in Nashville? We have a national profile at the moment, and we should be in the position of taking advantage of that to get national grants from organizations and foundations and others who are doing these things and filling in, frankly, holes that have been created by the federal government and state governments in tax collection. And so in some ways, I see the idea of getting someone like that on staff as a way to potentially get to a whole bunch of these other things more quickly without consistently having to go back to the council. Anyway, statement, not question. Thank you. Again, as Board Member Young said, excellent detail and presentation, so thanks.
District 9?
I have a couple questions. I'll try to run through them quickly. The early learning enhancements, expanding high demand pre-K seats through the Hillwood Early Learning Center. I'm super excited about that. But also, how will this work if Westmead still needs it as a swing site? Would it be two separate locations?
Yes, so our team has worked pretty diligently that on that campus, they've already been able to kind of lay out what it would look like.
Separate buildings,
Separate
so
buildings,
that makes sense.
for the ELC versus a swing space we'll need for Westmead as we work through that new site structure.
Great. Moving down to the academic coherence section, I would just like, and you don't have to do it now, but I would like to at some point get more information, more specifics about what you are hoping to do to strengthen the GATE program. Like what kind of specific details you're hoping to do so that we can know what to advocate for if that's something we're interested in. Same thing with the unique learner enhancements, just kind of more specifics about what do you mean by improving differentiated learning strategies? Can we get some more detail on that? Doesn't have to happen right now.
Got it.
And then looking at talent strategy, that retention, recruitment, and workforce readiness, competitiveness for entry level, higher volume steps, that I'm excited to see that play out. I just wanted to ask, are we considering expanding our total number of steps to help?
Yes, that is a part of
Okay.
this particular plan, and I'm glad you brought me back to this, if I can say really quickly. Several years ago, when we started our initial pay analysis, where we were able to revamp all of our pay scales, we're now at a point where we're going back to the beginning to reassess what it will take for us to continue to be the most competitive when it comes to compensation for our staff. I think, that leads with retention of our employees, also can help with recruitment as well. And so that's where you see that package coming to play, because we've been studying and doing a deep dive into where we've lost some traction, where we can close some gaps for acceleration to remain competitive at every space across our pay scale, including, this includes adding a step on the pay scale.
Okay. And then I know in the past, we had talked about, you're looking just kind of in the little sidebar where it's robust benefits packages. You're talking about the paid, sick, parental, personal leave, all that. There had been some discussion about if we have the funds, we would love to increase the number of bereavement days that we offer. Is that also on the table as a potential if it could get funded?
It's not a part of this strategic compensation plan. The reason we included that is that it's often forgotten when we talk about compensation, that our benefits package is actually probably the most competitive in the state of Tennessee as well. And so that's just there just kind of as a reminder, so that as we're thinking about compensation, there are additional positive benefits to working and serving in Nashville. So currently that's not a part of this compensation package. We've been really studying where we can make the greatest benefit and pouring into our talent strategies across the district.
Okay, I appreciate that.
I'd like to plus one the additional bereavement day.
Yeah. It gets you to a full week if you need it, so it's. Yeah,
When we
anyway,
do that, we're
you've
going
had
to need
that
to
discussion,
increase
yeah.
classroom associates and all that. Okay, yeah.
Exactly.
And the investment, please. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Give us the numbers. Let us advocate. The Grow Your Own program, I'm excited about. I feel like we've kind of already been doing that unofficially. And I just want to make sure that we're not looking for this to replace existing partnerships that we have with groups that help us grow this would be in addition to.
This will be in addition to, and just for the record,
Okay.
I'm going to look at Dr. Bellamy here. Nashville was actually the first district in the state of Tennessee that made a huge step in the right direction around Grow Your Own. And so it is not replacing anything. We are just interested in being the strongest, most transformational district in this space, and that requires us to continue to invest in our people and our leaders, so that we are pouring into our people and preparing them for the seats that they'll serve in.
Yeah. No, I'm very on board with it. I just wanted to make sure we're hitting as many ways that we can do it as possible.
Absolutely. So nothing is being sunset. This
Okay.
is us being really strategic around what's next, including, if you don't mind, our EPP program. So one of our investments here is to begin to train.
You spell out that acronym.
Our educator preparation program that would allow us to train and certify our own educators here in Nashville.
Okay. Okay, I'm almost done. This is my last one because the other questions got asked. So the philanthropic enhancements, I think that's really interesting. And I just wanted to kind of put a plug in to say, is it possible that these funds could just be startup funds and then they raise the funds?
Oh, absolutely.
And so that money then could come back to us for other uses in
So-
future operating
So
budgets.
what happens typically, and we've been studying this, is that you have that initial benefit, and because then of the capacity that's built in bringing in funding, you tend to have to build out the
Yeah.
team. So I just want to caution us there, because once you get to X dollars, right, and there's some research around this, you've got to actually build out the team to be able to manage that level of investment coming in and properly align into the key priorities of the district. So it probably will be more of a long-term strategy than initial.
Great.
There's a way to do that. Just in the way that grants work, you can actually, even with donors, you say, there is an indirect cost, right, to manage this
Yeah.
that gets carved out of the funds essentially. They
Yeah,
give us.
that overhead cost, I think, is built into almost every grant I've ever seen. So, yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Last one. I am so excited to see environmental stewardship on here, and I'm sure you knew I would say that, but I am really excited about the potential to get a sustainability manager. Especially, I love seeing this composting initiative on here. We had the mayor's pilot program that we did in conjunction with the mayor's group last year. We diverted from, only 10 schools? We diverted 51.27 tons of organic waste just from those schools. I mean, just the amount of good we could do. And we were also able to have the share tables where kids could take food home, and we weren't just throwing it away, but it was going back towards feeding our families on a larger scale, which I'm just so excited about. There's so many good things, not just environmentally, but relationally, that I think this could be a part of. So I'm going to be advocating heavily for this environmental stewardship, which I'm sure doesn't surprise you one bit. Thank you.
Thank you. And for the audience, we are still in the Budget and Finance Committee meeting. I want to take an opportunity to go back around one more time really quick before we end out. So if you don't have questions, that's great. If you do, raise your hand so that I can call on you. Board Member Taylor? This is your opportunity. Go ahead if you need to. Okay. You're good? You're good? Anybody else? You ready? You got all yours out? Awesome. I do have one question around technology. Can you kind of direct me where in the budget are we doing any type of investment? Is that part of our continuance of operation, continuity of operation?
One-to-one technology.
The one-to-one technology?
It's in capital budget.
It's in capital budget, perfect. And then, given that we had to do some reallocation around exceptional ed, is there any considerations within our budget about what we may face next year around budget shortfalls and having to cover that, given our reduction in federal funding?
Yes, so far, our team has done an exceptional job of predicting where we were, where we are currently, and where we will be. So you see some of that will be captured in continuity of operations, just kind of the inflationary things that go along with that. Under academic acceleration, I believe it is, academic coherence, item 6, where you have unique learner enhancements. We do have some strategies, particularly around our English language learners, that we want to support. For example, we know we had a slight decline in graduation rate for our English language learners this past year. And we've worked closely with families and educators and community leaders around some strategies we might deploy. And so that's represented in that differentiated student need. So again, some of the EE expansion from last year will capture in continuity of operations. And one that we are seeing surface is around the needs for our English language learners.
Thank you. Another question is around visual and performing arts across the district. What type of investments are we looking at or sustaining as we go into the FY27?
Yes, you see a strategy there to the tune of about $700,000, which will allow us to continue to capture student performances. Transportation continues to be a need. Instrument repair, as we built out our programming across our clusters, we're seeing a greater demand there. Also compensation for our vision performing arts teachers and enriching camps are some of the key strategies there. As many of you know, we are looking at a larger capital campaign around our visual and performing arts, and this is complementary to that work in preparation for what we hope to be true in space and performance opportunity for our students in the near future.
Thank you. Another question was around, you talked about revisiting compensation and competitive compensation for our district. Will that require another pay study?
No, we actually have had the capacity in-house. You all spoke of some of the usages around AI. So we've been able to kind of accelerate our learning and our kind of number crunching around what's necessary for us to remain competitive in that space.
Okay, thank you. And I just want to clarify, there's no is there a requirement for a pay study? When is it a requirement or when it's not? I'm sorry, say that again.
You're conflating study and formulating committee when they do benefit study on the Metro government side. There's a requirement for a study and formulating committee to do every 5 years.
Gotcha.
For that, but it's not required for us to consider that.
Thank you for that clarification. And then one other, weapon detection systems, as we begin to look at safety and security over the next year or so in that implementation. I know we've done high school, we've done middle school. What are our considerations around elementary and the type of investments that we're needing? I know it's written within here. Will that cover that particular investment?
Yes, as our review team is studying that and leaning into it. As you could imagine, particularly in the elementary space, it is taking a lot more communication and getting feedback in that space. So our team is reviewing that, but it is representative of the strategies that could be deployed in the next fiscal year.
Perfect. One more go round. No, we're good. All right. Thank you so much. Dr. Battle, I just want to thank you and your team for your presentation, the details of your presentation. Thank you for incorporating the feedback of board members, our community, our staff, and families across our district, and all of those different stakeholders who play a part in how we do budgeting. For the record, we have hosted, prior to this budgeting session, I think, Dr. Battle, you and your team have met with different groups. Our board as a whole has also met with our teachers, our support staff, Metro Council, bus drivers, as well as the community. And we have another community event that's coming up tomorrow from 5 to 6 p.m. at the MNPS Wellness Center, which is right across from this board office. So we invite the community to come out and have a conversation, to listen more, ask questions. This is your opportunity to continue to do so. One other question that I have, I'm sorry, prior to ending, there's, and Board Member Mays uplifted it. How can those who want to get more involved in the budget process or be more aware of the budget process at their school level get involved?
So our student-based budgeting process does require representation from various stakeholders within the community. Every school kind of functions on the same timeline and cycle with regards to that. And so contacting the executive principal directly if there's information needed or awareness around the budgeting process. As was mentioned earlier, all of our school-based budgets are shared on our website. They're posted there every year. In fact, you can see multiple years if needed. So check out the website. But the executive principals at every school are the primary contact for any questions or follow-up.
Thank you. And then as a follow-up to what Dr. Battle said, this meeting that we held today, as well as any other meeting moving forward, is available on our website. If you go to MNPS Budgets, you're able to pull up the meeting. You can also pull it up on our MNPS YouTube channel. So these are accessible, as well as the documents that we covered today, and the budgets from this current school year and previous school years are all publicly accessible. So if you have any other questions, please reach out to your school board member or the district to have any of those discussions. And as far as the board is concerned, if you have any other questions moving forward, if you could please make sure you're relaying that to Dr. Battle and her team, as well as myself, so that we're incorporating this as we continue to have future budget discussions. Thank you. We will conclude this meeting.